I was staring right at my neighbor's chest, and she was looking straight back at me. That is how the worst moment of my life started. My name is Ryan Carter. I am a graphic designer, which sounds cooler than it really is. Most days I sit in my small apartment in Harbor Bay and make logos and websites for people who say things like, they love it, but want everything changed. I moved here 8 months ago because I thought living near the ocean would fix something in me. I thought the sound of waves would make me less stressed, less lonely, less tired. I was wrong. I still worked all the time. I still felt worn out every day. I still had no real friends. My apartment had a nice view of the water, but most of the time my blinds were half closed and I stared at my computer instead. My neighbor Emma lived in the apartment right next to mine. We shared a wall. At night, I sometimes heard soft jazz through it. Smooth piano, quiet sax, the kind of music people play in movies when their lives look perfect. Emma always looked like that when I saw her. Perfect. We passed each other in the hallway maybe once a week. She wore neat blazers or fitted dresses, her blonde hair pulled back tight, a leather bag over her shoulder. Even when she checked her mail, she looked like she was on her way somewhere important. She would smile and say, "Hey." I would say "hey" back in my old hoodie and worn sneakers. Then we would keep walking. That was our entire relationship. One Sunday afternoon, I hit a wall. I had worked 17 days in a row without a real break. My eyes burned from staring at my screen. My shoulders felt stiff and heavy. My head was full of noise. I knew if I did not get out of my apartment, I was going to lose it. So I grabbed an old folding chair from my closet, pulled on some shorts and a t-shirt that did not match, and headed outside without even looking in the mirror. I walked 4 blocks down to Shoreline Beach. The moment my feet hit the sand, I felt a little better. The air smelled like salt and sunscreen. The waves rolled in steady and strong. Kids built sand castles. A dog chased a ball. Couples walked by the water holding hands. I found a spot a little away from everyone else and set up my chair. I brought a paperback thriller with me, something about a detective who walks into the wrong room and knows something is off. I opened the book and tried to read, but my mind would not slow down. You have deadlines. You should be working. You are wasting time. I forced myself to look up and breathe. I told myself I needed to act like a normal person for one afternoon. No clients, no emails, just the ocean. That was when I saw her. Emma was about 30 feet away near a big blue beach umbrella. At first, I did not recognize her. Her hair was down, loose and wavy, falling past her shoulders instead of pulled back tight. She wore a bright yellow swimsuit and a white wrap tied around her waist. She was laughing with another woman. Not her hallway smile, but a real laugh. She looked softer, happier, more real. For a second I thought about walking over to say hi, but it felt strange. We barely talked in our own building. Walking up to her at the beach in my faded shirt and messy hair felt like a bad idea. So I looked back down at my book, or at least I tried to. I kept glancing up. Then things changed fast. Emma's friend got a call and walked toward the water, pacing and talking on her phone. Emma stayed by the umbrella, digging through a big canvas bag. She pulled out sunglasses and a water bottle. Then she reached for her wrap, tugging it a little tighter around herself. That was when the wind hit. A strong gust rolled across the beach. The umbrella near me shook so hard I had to grab it. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Emma's wrap lift. The wind caught the light fabric and pulled it clean off her body. 1 second it was tied around her. The next, it was flying through the air. For 2 or 3 frozen seconds, Emma stood there topless, and I was looking right at her. My brain shut down. My eyes saw everything before my mind could react. Then it all snapped back at once. Her hands flew up. She spun, grabbed the wrap, and pulled it across her chest. As she did, her eyes shot up and met mine. Her face went from shock to pure horror. My face burned. I dropped my eyes to my book so fast my neck hurt. My heart slammed against my ribs. All I could think was that I was the creep at the beach. It did not matter that it was an accident. It did not matter that the wind was to blame. She had seen me looking. I stared at the page, not reading a word. I just needed somewhere else to look. I read the same line again and again, my hands shaking. After what felt like forever, I risked a quick glance up. Emma was talking to her friend, and they were both looking in my direction. My stomach dropped. I was already planning my escape when I saw movement in the sand. Someone was walking toward me. The steps stopped right next to my chair. A shadow fell over my book. I looked up slowly. Emma stood there, her wrap pulled tight, sunglasses pushed up on her head, her eyes locked on mine. "Hey," she said. Then she looked at me and asked, "Can we talk for a minute?" My heart was still racing when Emma sat down on the sand next to my chair like this was the most normal thing in the world. Up close, she looked different from the woman I passed in the hallway. Her hair was a little messy from the wind. Her cheeks were pink from the sun. She looked real, not perfect, and somehow that made everything feel even more intense. "I've been meaning to introduce myself properly," she said. "We've lived next to each other for 8 months and barely know each other. That's kind of strange, right?" It took my brain a second to catch up. "Yeah," I said. "I guess it is." She nodded toward the water where her friend was still pacing on the phone. "Melissa had to take a work call. I was sitting there alone and saw you. I thought maybe this was a sign to stop just saying hi in the hallway and disappearing." She smiled, small and nervous. "I didn't plan for the universe to make such a dramatic icebreaker." I let out a shaky laugh. "That's one way to describe it." She tilted her head and studied my face for a moment. "Look," she said. "The wind grabbed my wrap. It happens. You looked away." "You didn't make it weird. So let's just call it bad timing and move on. Deal?" Quote. "Deal," I said quickly. My shoulders dropped like someone had taken a heavy bag off my back. "Good," she said. "Then I'm Emma." "I know," I blurted, then felt stupid. "I mean, I've seen your mail by the boxes." She laughed. "So you know my last name and that I get way too many packages?" "Pretty much," I said. "I'm Ryan Carter." "I know," she said. "I can hear you typing through the wall late at night." I figured only a freelancer works like that. I blinked. "You can hear that?" "Sometimes," she said. Not in a bad way, just in a, wow, this guy never stops kind of way. I told her about my work. She told me she was a marketing strategist. She had moved from Boston. I told her I came from Seattle. We both laughed when we realized we had the same idea that the ocean would somehow fix everything. "It turns out I'm just stressed with a better view," she said. "That's exactly it," I said. We talked longer than I expected. About bad clients. About work calls that never ended. About how tired we both were. It felt strange at first, like walking on a floor you're not sure will hold. Then it started to feel easy. At one point, she went quiet and looked out at the water. "Can I ask you something kind of personal?" she said. "Sure," I said, even though my chest tightened. "How do people find balance?" she asked. "Between work and life without feeling guilty all the time." I laughed softly. "If you find out, please tell me." "I moved here trying to find that and failed." She smiled. "At least we failed in the same place." After a while, Melissa came back and eyed me like she was trying to figure out my entire life story in 5 seconds. "That's my cue," Emma said, standing up, "before she thinks I ran off forever." She brushed the sand off her legs, then looked back at me. "There's a neighborhood gathering next Saturday at the community center. I usually avoid those, but I'm thinking of going this time. You should come." My heart jumped. "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." She pulled out her phone. "Give me your number. I'll text you the details." Quote. I handed her my phone, still half convinced this wasn't real. She saved my contact and handed it back. "Ryan next door," she said with a smile. "Creative," I said. "I try," she replied, then walked back to her friend. That night, I replayed everything in my head. The panic, the conversation. The way she had turned the worst moment of my life into something warm and unexpected. A few days later, my phone buzzed. "Neighborhood gathering this Saturday at 6. You should come." A second message followed right after. "Also, do you like Thai food?" I stared at the screen longer than I should have. I typed back that I liked Thai. She replied that there was a new place on Harbor Street and asked if I wanted to go together before the gathering. Saturday came faster than I expected. At 5 sharp, there was a knock on my door. Emma stood there in a light green sundress, her hair loose and wavy again. For a second, I forgot how to talk. "You ready?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "I am." We drove to the restaurant, talked easily, laughed, shared food. At one point our fingers brushed when we reached for the same plate, and it sent a warm spark through me I couldn't ignore. After dinner, we walked to the community center together. It was crowded and loud and exactly the kind of thing I usually hated. But Emma stayed close. Our hands brushed more than once. Each time, it felt like a quiet promise. When it got too much, we slipped outside to a small path that led to a park by the water. The sun was setting, painting the sky with soft colors. "I moved here because I didn't like who I was becoming," I admitted. She nodded. "Me too." We stood there, two tired people by the ocean, finally being honest. Then she asked me something that made my heart stop. "There's a fundraiser next weekend," she said, "at the old boathouse on the pier. I bought a ticket and planned not to go." She took a breath. "Would you go with me?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." She smiled, and in that moment I knew this wasn't just about a beach accident anymore. Something real was starting, and neither of us was running away this time. The week leading up to the fundraiser felt longer than it should have. I worked, answered emails, and tried to focus, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Emma, to the way she smiled when she was relaxed, to how easy it felt to talk to her when we stopped pretending we were fine. I kept checking my phone like a teenager, half hoping she would text, half afraid I would sound too eager if I did first. On Saturday evening, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, trying to tie a dark tie I barely remembered how to knot. I changed shirts twice before settling on a gray button-up that made me look like I had my life at least partly together. A few minutes before 7, I stepped into the hallway and walked the short distance to Emma's door. My heart was beating way too fast for such a small walk. I knocked. The door opened, and Emma stood there in an emerald green dress. The hallway light caught in her eyes, making them look brighter. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. For a second, my mind went completely blank. "You look," I started, then stopped. She smiled. "I'll accept whatever you were about to say." "You look amazing," I said honestly. She glanced at my tie. "You clean up pretty well, too." She reached out and straightened it just a little. That small touch made my chest feel tight in the best way. We drove toward the pier with the windows cracked, the night air cool and salty. The old boathouse glowed ahead of us, wrapped in white string lights. Inside, music played softly. Big windows looked out over the dark ocean. I could hear waves hitting the pier under our feet. Emma stayed close as we moved through the room. She introduced me to people, her hand brushing mine now and then. When the band started playing, she looked at me. "Want to dance?" "I should warn you," I said. "I'm terrible at it." She laughed and held out her hand. "Good thing I'm not judging." On the dance floor, she slid closer and rested her head lightly against my shoulder. We didn't do much more than sway, but it felt right. The room faded away. I could feel her breathing, steady and warm. "I'm really glad you came with me," she said. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be," I replied. After a few songs, she suggested getting some air. We stepped out onto the wooden deck. The ocean stretched out below us, dark and endless. The night felt quiet and full at the same time. "That day at the beach," she said softly, "I was embarrassed. But I was also tired of feeling invisible. I'd been watching you, too, you know. In the hallway. Always working. Always tired in the same way I was." I'd told her I thought she was too put together to ever notice me. She laughed and said she wasn't nearly as put together as she looked. I stepped closer. "Being with you feels different," I said. "Like I don't have to pretend?" Her eyes shone in the dim light. "You make me feel that way, too." I asked if I could kiss her. She said yes. The kiss was gentle and slow, like neither of us wanted to rush it. When we pulled back, she rested her forehead against mine. "That was worth waiting for," she whispered. We talked for a long time out there. About changing our work. About wanting lives that felt real. About trying to be honest instead of hiding. Before we went back inside, she asked something that stayed with me. "What if we tried building something together?" she said. "Not just work. Life." I smiled. "I like that." When we walked home later, the street was quiet. At our doors, she squeezed my arm and said goodnight. I stood there after she went inside, knowing that whatever this was, it mattered. The next morning, I woke to a note slid under my door. Meet me at the pier at sunrise. Bring coffee. As the sun came up over the water and she talked about building a future together, I realized something simple and true. That awful moment at the beach hadn't ruined anything. It had started everything. The weeks after the fundraiser felt unreal in the quietest, best way. Nothing big changed overnight, but everything felt different. Emma and I stopped being two neighbors who passed each other in the hallway and became two people who chose to spend time together on purpose. Some evenings, she brought her laptop over and worked at my kitchen table while I sat at my desk. We did not always talk. Sometimes we just shared the same space, soft music playing, the sound of typing filling the room. Other times, we took breaks and made dinner together. We burned grilled cheese once and laughed so hard we ended up ordering pizza instead. We started taking walks on the beach at night. No chairs, no books, just the sound of the waves and honest conversations. We talked about our days, our stress, the things we were afraid to admit out loud. I told her how work still tried to swallow me whole. She told me how she felt pressure to always be strong and capable. We promised to say something when we felt ourselves pulling away. It was not perfect. One week, Emma got slammed with a big client project and went quiet. She answered messages short and late. Old fears crept into my head. I told myself she was losing interest. I almost shut down the way I always did. Instead, I knocked on her door. She opened it looking exhausted. Her hair was pulled up messy, her eyes tired. "I'm sorry," she said before I could even speak. I didn't mean to disappear. Quote, I told her how it made me feel. She listened. She apologized. We talked it through, sitting on her couch with our knees touching. It felt strange and good to face something instead of running from it. Another time, I spiraled after a client hated a design I loved. I shut down, barely speaking for a day. Emma noticed and did not let it slide. She came over, sat across from me, and waited until I talked. No fixing, no judging, just listening. Little by little, we got better at it. One evening, while we were eating takeout on my couch, Emma leaned back and looked thoughtful. "Do you ever think about doing work that actually matters?" she asked. "All the time," I said. "I just don't think I'm brave enough to try." She smiled softly. "What if you didn't have to be brave alone?" That idea stayed with me. 3 months after the beach, I woke up to another note under my door. Meet me at the pier. Sunrise. Bring coffee. The sky was still gray when I got there. Emma stood by the railing. Jacket zipped up. Hair pulled back from the wind. I handed her a cup, and she smiled like it was the best gift in the world. "I want to do it," she said without wasting time. "The idea we talked about, helping smaller groups. Building something that fits the life we actually want." My heart picked up. "You're serious?" "I am," she said. "And not just about work." She turned toward me fully. "I want a real life with you, one where we don't hide when things get hard. One where we choose each other even on the days it's messy." I set my coffee down and took her hands. "I want that too," I said. More than anything. The sun rose over the water, turning everything gold. Standing there with her, I felt steady in a way I never had before. I used to think that day at the beach was the worst moment of my life. Now I knew it was the moment everything finally started to change. Building something together turned out to be both exciting and terrifying. Emma and I did not quit our jobs or make any dramatic announcements. We started small. Late nights at my kitchen table turned into planning sessions instead of just work. We sketched ideas on scrap paper, talked through what kind of clients we wanted, and more importantly, what kind of life we did not want anymore. We wanted work that meant something, projects where people actually cared, clients who treated us like humans instead of machines. We knew it would take time, but for the first time, the future felt like something we were walking toward together, instead of running from alone. Our relationship grew in the same slow, steady way. Some days were easy. We laughed, cooked, walked by the water, and felt light. Other days were heavy. Deadlines piled up. Stress showed up uninvited. Old habits knocked at the door. There were nights Emma stayed late at her place finishing reports, and I felt that familiar pull to disappear into my screen. There were mornings I woke up grumpy and distant for no clear reason, but we kept our promise. We talked, even when it was uncomfortable. Especially then. One evening, after a long day, Emma came over and sat beside me on the couch. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not of us, of messing this up, of slipping back into the version of myself that hides behind work." I took her hand. "I'm scared too," I said, "but I think being scared means this matters." She smiled and rested her head on my shoulder. "I don't want to go back to feeling invisible." "You're not," I said, "not to me." We started blending our lives in small ways. Extra clothes at each other's places. Groceries bought for two instead of one. Mornings that started with coffee together instead of silence. One night, as we lay on my couch listening to the waves outside, Emma traced slow circles on my arm. "Do you ever think about how close we came to never doing this?" she asked. "All the time," I said. "If I'd left the beach 5 minutes earlier, we might still be strangers." She smiled. "Best terrible timing ever." A few weeks later, Emma surprised me with a small envelope. Inside was a simple logo sketch, nothing polished, just an idea. "I thought this could be us," she said. "Not perfect, just honest." I felt something tighten in my chest. "I love it," I said, and for once, I did not ask to change anything. That night, standing by the window with the ocean stretching out in front of us, I realized something. I was not constantly exhausted anymore. Work was still work, but it no longer felt like the only thing holding me together. Emma turned toward me, her expression soft and serious. "Ryan," she said, "I don't want this to be a chapter that ends." I looked at her, at the woman who had walked across the sand and changed my life without even trying. "It's not," I said. "It's the story." She leaned in and kissed me, slow and sure, and in that moment, I knew we were already building something stronger than fear. The morning everything finally felt real, I woke up before my alarm. The room was quiet, except for the distant sound of waves. Emma was still asleep beside me, her hair spread across the pillow, her breathing slow and steady. I watched her for a moment and felt something settle in my chest. Not excitement. Not fear. Peace. That feeling was new to me. Life did not suddenly turn perfect. Clients still sent late emails. Projects still went wrong. Some days we were tired and short with each other. But now, tired did not mean alone. Stress did not mean silence. When one of us started to pull away, the other noticed. One afternoon, months after the beach, we sat at my kitchen table surrounded by notes, laptops, and half-empty coffee cups. We had just finished our first real project together, a small nonprofit that helped kids learn art after school. They loved the work. They hugged us when we delivered it. Emma leaned back in her chair and smiled. "We actually did it." "We did," I said, "and no one asked for 70 revisions." She laughed. "That alone feels like a miracle." We celebrated that night with takeout and a walk on the beach. The sky was clear, the moon reflected on the water. Emma slipped her hand into mine like it belonged there. "Do you ever think about that day?" she asked. "The beach?" I said. "Yeah," she said. "How random it was. How uncomfortable. How close we were to missing this." I nodded. "I used to think it was the worst moment of my life." "And now?" she asked. "Now I think it was the moment that forced us to stop hiding," I said, "from each other, from ourselves." She stopped walking and turned to face me. "I don't want to hide anymore," she said. "Not from work, not from fear, not from you." "You don't have to," I said. "I'm right here." Later that night, back at our building, we stood between our 2 apartment doors like we used to, but it felt different now. There was no awkward space. No rush to escape. Emma reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I've been carrying this around for a week," she said. I opened it. It was a short list. Places she wanted to travel. Things she wanted to learn. A life that felt full instead of busy. At the bottom, she had written one line, "Build this with Ryan." My throat tightened. "You know," I said softly, "I moved here thinking the ocean would fix me." She smiled. "Did it?" Quote. "No," I said. "You did." She shook her head and stepped closer. "We did." We kissed there in the hallway, not rushed, not nervous, just certain. Sometimes I still sit on the beach with a book. Sometimes the wind still kicks up. Sometimes life still surprises me in uncomfortable ways. But now I know something I did not before. The moments that shake you are not always there to embarrass you. Sometimes they are there to wake you up. And every time I see the ocean, I think about that white wrap flying through the air, the panic in my chest, and the woman who chose to walk across the sand and talk to me anyway. What started as an accident became the beginning of everything, and this time, nothing about it was accidental at all.